Trench warfare lasted for several years on the Western Front during World War I. The trenches were dug deep into often wet and muddy grounds. For weeks at a time, the soldiers ate, slept, and lived in these cramped, protected defences. Here is a typical day in the trenches. Conditions in the trenches were poor, many with rat infestations. The soldiers were sleeping in bolt holes or trench boards for a couple of hours at a time. It was often wet and muddy, which caused trench foot. Dysentery, cholera, and other disease were rife. So not only did our troops have to contend with these terrible conditions, but also lived in terror, the threat of mines and gunfire, fearing for their lives, watching their fellow troops die and be maimed protecting our country. By the end of the war, in 1918, more than 15 million people across 135 countries had lost their lives.
I was 18 and a half, and I was called up. I saw 2 battlefields. I shall never forget it as long as I live. The officer was going down the trench. Anybody who didn't go in was shot on sight for cowardice. We went over and we crawled. If you stood up, you were dead. And I came across a Cornishman. He was ripped from his shoulder to his stomach with shrapnel. His inside was out on the ground in a pool of blood. He said, "Shoot me." Before we could draw a revolver to shoot him, he was beyond all human aid. He died. And he just said one word, "Mother." And that haunted me all my life.
As you can see from the aerial view of this replica, the trenches were dug out in a zigzag style. This was to stop enemies taking out large sections of the trenches in one blast. The replicas are just around the corner from us, so we were fortunate enough to be able to take a family walk. They were dug out because there was a great demand for them in film and TV. They were used in the war scenes from Downton Abby and also for the famous Christmas advert for Sainsbury's. Sneaky look, walk through. This is it. it's still flooded in here, but steps going up. Sneak around here. See. Latrine. That's the latrine down there. There. There's some steps up there, so I'm going to go up there. Well, there's no steps up this way, I don't think. It's rather windy, so if you can't hear me, I'm really sorry about that. Yeah. Imagine being down here. I'll find my way out. Yeah, I'm coming. Let's go that way. She. So there you have it. There you have it, the trenches.